Alright, so recently I talked about the progression problem in modern MMOs. And when it comes to this kind of topic, a common response is, hey, maybe MMOs aren't for you. Which honestly, that response kind of surprises me because that means there are people who aren't MMO boomers that play MMOs still. I use the word modern specifically to imply that things have changed. So I want to talk about how this came to be and just overall how I feel this has changed the MMO experience. And it is largely due to the rise of freemium. So initially, the subscription-based model was pretty much the standard. You would buy the game and then you would just pay a monthly subscription. And we would see this back all the way in 1996 on like the 3DO with the Meridian 59, Ultima Online, and then leading up to, of course, World of Warcraft. And that is really how things stayed for a very long time, especially in the West. And I think talking about the quote-unquote WoW killers is kind of, I guess you could say, a flaw in the subscription model. Blizzard made World of Warcraft that game that was for everybody. They went with a crazy marketing strategy and it absolutely worked. It was just overall a phenomenon, and like it ended WoW Classic with 8 million subs, and then it went up to 12 million, I think, in Wrath. So suddenly the MMO genre became this gold rush for a lot of developers thinking that they could be the next WoW, which became the quote WoW killers. And a lot of them pretty much just failed, some pretty spectacularly. We got this post here from the Baldy Summit showing like all these WoW killers that failed. On this list, I really enjoyed Rift and Terra quite a bit. And the thing is, these games didn't get that many players, that many subscribers, so they didn't really feel like it was worth the development of the game, and the game just shuts down. And then a fact is that the average age of a gamer is rising. And when you look at channel analytics of mine or pretty much anybody who does MMO content, you're going to see a lot of older people. And a lot of the people who are able to swipe and play a game now, they're probably the same people who are using their parents' credit card to pay for the game and sub back in the day on these MMOs. And with that comes the issue of a kid trying to convince their parents to not buy them 2 games, but also let 2 games be a sub on their credit card. And so when everybody in the world basically is playing World of Warcraft, and you can only play one game, and also you're still absolutely enjoying this game, why would people want to go try out a new game? And that's why I believe a lot of these games just went down real quick. The barrier of entry was too high for what was the average gamer back then. And then during the WoW killer era over in Korea, they actually launched MapleStory, which was their freemium game with a ton of microtransactions. And that kind of became the standard over there, where they just kept on making these kind of freemium games because that was making them a lot of money. Meanwhile, in the West, we still hugged to subscription-based model, and basically all we had is World of Warcraft and these games that died out every couple months. Then Final Fantasy XIV came back with ARR, and then there was a resurgence in RuneScape. But overall, a lot of people were starting to see the success of the freemium game with a bunch of microtransactions, and that just slowly started to just become the standard. World of Warcraft has become the hybrid of both, where you still pay a sub and you can still just throw your wallet into that game endlessly. And so this model greatly reduced the barrier to entry. No longer did you have to buy the game, you didn't have to pay for a sub, you would just get into it, and then from there they hope that one, you have a lot more money than you know what to do with, or maybe you have an undiscovered crippling gambling addiction. And especially now, since the average gamer is getting older, they're gonna have more money to spend on the game, and a lot of them are gonna be people who didn't have the money back in the day when they were young. So let's talk about the engagement model. The old engagement model was really that you bought the game, you paid for your sub, and then you would just keep on playing because you have this sub. There are a lot of people who say, hey, if I'm paying for this game time, I'm going to get my money's worth. I'm going to go hard into this game for the next month. And then a lot of other people aren't going to really want to unsub, resub, so they're like, hey, there's content coming out soon, I'm just going to keep my sub active. And for a long time, that was the standard. That was the model of getting player engagement. And while the freemium model doesn't have a sub to play the game, they often have a system in the game that is basically a sub to get a bunch of perks in the game. Examples are going to be Crystalline Aura or the VIP or VVIP packages, that in Lost Ark and Vindictus respectively. And for a very long time, this was the type of system that was something you would have to pay real money for. It took quite a long time for this to be this kind of system that you could purchase in-game. And then from there, they would take it to daily engagement drivers, which, as you can probably guess, is your daily and your weekly content. This is going to be basically required content for you to do if you actually want to progress in the game, as it is going to be farming a bunch of materials and a lot of currency. And this would also be something that would get adopted by the subscription model games as well. A lot of games also like to do like the login rewards and then a login streak. But since I mentioned it, now on to progression. As stated, this all relies on you doing your daily and weekly content religiously. And more often than not, you are running by an upgrade system where you are just trying to enhance or hone up your gear. This leads into a lot of gambling mechanics basically, as no longer is getting the gear enough, instead you're going to be gambling on a chance of it succeeding or not. This creates a lot of variance in people's success, which creates an opening for them to sell materials and upgrades to the people who are unlucky, or maybe even the people who are lucky and still just want to reach higher and higher. This type of progression gives like a quick dopamine hit when you actually hit the tap, and while you might get a glow, generally your gameplay just turns into the number just goes higher. This is vastly different from a progression of a older style game, or even a newer style game like PoE 2, where when you get a gear upgrade, you feel it right away. You notice a difference. It will change how you play. When you get something with increased attack speed, when you get something with movement speed on it. In WoW, when you get Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, you hit these crazy chance on hits. Or when you finally complete your new set bonus and your new tier armor. This kind of progression system changes how you interact with the game and just makes it a different experience, even if it is just a little bit but noticeable. While again, in this freemium model, it's generally, the number goes higher. Even when you have elixirs and transcendence, nothing really fundamentally changes about your gameplay. The only time there is a change is if you're playing like the Faith elixirs for supports, since their buff is reliant on their awakening timing. And then as previously mentioned a couple times, there's going to be a lot of gambling. The time you sink into the game for the materials might mean nothing if it fails. And in the early day of freemium, this was actually so much worse, because when you fail the hone or an upgrade or an enhancement, you often will lose the item completely. So in Vindictus initially, once you failed a +8 going to +9, you had a very high chance of just completely losing the item. It might have even been a 100% chance. Nowadays, the freemium developers have realized how horrible that is and how it just makes people quit the game. So now you don't often just lose the weapon, but you basically just lost everything you did to go into it. And then it can turn into either, there's a pity system, or maybe it's just a progression bar. So in a subscription-based game, it was pretty easy to do endgame and just loot and scoot. Meaning once you get all the gear that you needed from the raid, you stop playing that character, you maybe even just stop raiding. From my experience, more often than not, people will just start raiding with an alt instead. But they don't really have that much reason to continue raiding on it unless they just enjoy the raid, they want to help out their friends, or maybe they just want to spend some time doing progressions, other games, whatever. However, in the freemium model, there generally is no endpoint, since these games often revolve around getting small gains. Like previously mentioned, you're getting a bunch of materials, but also the end game generally is your biggest gold generator, or whatever currency your game might have. So while that content is still endgame, it makes it forever relevant, because the gold you're going to need is going to sink into the upcoming systems, and the materials you're getting from it you're going to need because you're going to eventually have to move on to the next one. And so this results in people not feeling like there is a good stopping point. You have to keep on going, you have to keep on grinding, you have to keep on gaining your currency because you're going to need it. And I guess just a little side note here is that something that started off really in the freemium game, but then later extended off to normal MMOs as well, or all MMOs I should say. In the world of MMO and online gaming, people want to stand out, but it is really hard to do that in this kind of gearing system, because essentially everybody has the same gear since it's just upgrading that gear. If you saw somebody with Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, you know that guy put in the work for it. You see him because he stands out, because not everybody's going to have that kind of gear. And this started off really with the freemium game because they had costumes and skins. This evolved into not only costumes and skins in every other game, but also like a wardrobe feature where you can wear older armors, which I do think is a great thing. I do think this is good for games in general to have people really try to make their character their own visually. But also at the same time, you lose that just recognition of people looking at you and saying, I know what this guy's done. So all these progression and endgame designs, they are designed to keep you on the treadmill. The reason why the game requires so much investment is because that's how they want it to be. Yes, you could be honing forever at like a 50% rate, but then you wouldn't feel inclined to spend all your day on the game grinding out materials for more honing attempts, nor would you be willing to open up the shop and buy the materials. You've heard this before and you're going to hear it again. They are creating problems to sell you the solution. While the majority of people who play these games will quit and say that it is too demanding, it takes too much time, it is just too much of a job, the people left will say it's not bad if you just do X, Y, and Z. They refuse to question the fundamental design of the game, which is one, like leave the multi-million-dollar company alone, but also putting yourself kind of in this Nico chair. But you also have to remember that this kind of genre draws in the people with an abundance of free time. So for them, this feels like a good achievement for them, which is very fair. But still, like, think about all the free time you could be having for other games. Just think about it. But for that reason, the game design has been compromised, because now these systems, these hurdles, they all exist to push you towards the store. Now we're getting to a situation where people feel like the game is designed around the store. The store is the core of the game. And then if you choose to grind it out, you just will see people burning out. Because now on the daily, on the weekly, they are doing content that they're doing not because they want to do the content, but because they feel like they have to do the content. Because at the core of this content, it is not designed to be a fun content for you to just do. And this is why there is like a big topic and conversation about just how rough it is to get to Lost Ark's endgame. Not even just doing it, it's getting to it is hard. And of course that it is monetized to get to it. Now, I think a draw to MMOs is a sense of escapism. An MMO is meant for you to spend a lot of time, and you create your own character as a either self-insert or maybe something you wish you were, something you wanted to be, some wishful thinking of hair. I think it's pretty common for people to get some sort of attachment to their characters. And then, let's be honest, there's also RP servers in a lot of games. And I think for a lot of people was that your MMO, everything in there, your achievements, your worth of value in the game was decided by what you do in the game. Because again, if you had Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade, or the Windseeker, you were kind of a big deal and a big deal on your server. But now when games go hyper monetized with pay to win, suddenly your status IRL reflects your status in game. In the crudest way possible, poor people are reminded that they are still poor. It diminishes a sense of accomplishment for a lot of things you do in the game. And suddenly anybody who gets ahead of you, anybody who is well geared is suddenly somebody who has spent a lot of money in the game. There's no way they're not a swiper if they're doing better than you. And the truth is, that might be true because a lot of people do swipe an RMT. But what I'm getting at is no matter what the truth is, everything is going to get undermined by being overgeared, overleveled, whatever it be, because you can just swipe past everything. And so the average player starts to feel like nothing is really truly earned or deserved in this game because again, you can just swipe. Which about that, there is a whole conversation that, hey, pay to win exists because it allows the people with a job who don't have the time to play to still be able to progress and keep up. But you also had to see it as a chicken and the egg scenario where you had to question why is it designed like this to begin with? Why does it have to be so time consuming? Which kind of segues into our next topic. Well, I think the downsides of the subscription model opened up the room for freemium. I do firmly think that mobile and gacha games exist because of the downsides of the freemium model. I think the freemium MMO was basically the precursor of a mobile and gacha game. A lot of the people who would have played MMOs back in the day are now choosing to play gacha. Just like freemium, now the barrier to entry is even easier. You don't even need a computer like an MMO, you just need your phone. Which is enforced by the fact that you're seeing a lot of MMOs also go mobile as well. But with the mobile design of games, it's content that is designed to be short. It's designed for you to pick up, do a little bit on the way, and then drop it, like if you're on the bus or something like that. This is a design for short game sessions. While they will still have daily engagement drivers, they're very low commitment. While the modern MMO experience is to really monopolize you with all your time, meanwhile, I feel like the gacha game basically tries to monopolize you by the harem you're buying out, which are still both different ways of like sunken cost fallacy. But also, I think progression in these games bring back something that the freemium game doesn't. Which is what I mentioned earlier with Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade, or the Windseeker. When you get that new waifu, you have a brand new character with a completely different skill set to play the game with. Yes, you have that instant dopamine hit of getting what you wanted, but now your gameplay and interaction with the game has just changed. Because then you get to play this character. And I do think the fact that these games aren't MMOs really doesn't bother people. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of the people who play MMOs these days, they see their party members as basically NPCs. Like, yeah, you do have statics, groups, and communities and stuff, but overall, the MMO experience has gotten a lot less social. And this is the part of the video where I should tell you I've never played a single gacha game in my life. While I understand the allure and the appeal as I just basically shield them a little bit, loot boxes and gacha systems are something I do not want to interact with, and I don't really see the point of playing one of those games free to play that much. Which, on a similar topic, since like most of the major gacha games are from China, World of Jade Dynasty just released in China the other day, and they have made the choice to go the old school MMO route of a subscription-based game where there's no pay to win. There is, of course, cosmetics and stuff like that to buy. It is a game where apparently you can get to level 24 for free, and then after that you would have to pay for your monthly sub. Currently, this is only in China, unfortunately, so it's something I want to keep my eyes on. I actually got to go check if Canon's streaming and see how that's going for him. While a lot of games from China are still hyper monetized, I think they're going away from pay to win. Which, last I checked, their net cafes is pretty much all esports populated, basically. As you Lost Ark players know, Tencent has made changes to Lost Ark in China, which we eventually inherited from them. I think there's a high chance they're going to add more changes to that game. Overall, it just feels like they are straying away from pay to win, which is really good to my opinion. I think that, China wins again, I guess. But yeah, World of Jade Dynasty is something I plan to keep my eyes on because I do think it could be really interesting. And I really would like to see how they take that old school design and make it into a modern game. Overall, I don't see like monetize and pay to win to be like the biggest issue. I think the bigger culprit is the fact that these games are designed around these as the core. And gacha games are a good example that you don't have to monopolize everybody's waking moment to make them a dedicated player to your game. And in my eyes, they are unironically doing a better attempt at respecting your time. But yeah, I really just wanted to explain how I've seen the MMO space change as we've gone to freemium, and a little bit why people do flock to these older MMOs being re-released like WoW Classic for like the third time. And while I don't hate newer games and MMOs, it is just really easy to see where the game design was compromised, where it changed for the sake of monetization. as some games just don't feel like they're a game first anymore, they're a storefront first. And the gameplay design and the mechanics, they're all there designed to lead you back to that store. So yeah, that's my take on how freemium has changed the MMO space. And I'm sure there's things I missed, so if you have any more to add, feel free to talk about in the comments.